says in Parshat Emor, Vayikra, Leviticus chapter 22, that which is bruised or crushed, broken or cut, you shall not offer to God. Ba'artzechem lo tasu. Don't do this in your land. The HaShiloah, Reb Mordechai Yosef of Izbitza, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, says, this is talking about how it's prohibited to deride any aspect of God's creation. Not man, not animal. The Gemara, or plant, stone. Okay, the Gemara derives this from the verse that is forbidden to, derives from this verse that is forbidden to castrate an animal, because that would be like mocking the creation. So, that which is bruised or crushed, broken or cut, we're talking about an offering in the temple. An offering in the temple had to be perfect, without blemish. And then, what about an animal whose price can't even be used to buy a sacrifice to offer in the temple? You sell a dog. Can you use that? You can't use that money for to be offered in the temple. So maybe it would be permitted to castrate a dog. No, it says ba'artzechem lo tasu. According to Pshat Halacha, it's advisable not to bring a dog into your house if you have a big courtyard, if it disturbs the neighbors. Another thing, if you really must bring a dog into your house, get a small dog. You have to be prepared. You're adopting a family member, and it's a 10-20 year investment. And if you want to castrate a dog, there's a problem in the Jewish law. You're not supposed to castrate a dog. So there are rabbis who permit, for certain health reasons for the dog, for safety reasons, the dog could be in heat and run out into a highway or something like that. So the rabbis say, but you should go to a non-Jewish doctor. That's the way around it. So can you castrate a dog? They asked Ben Zoma, the great Talmudist. He said, "Ba'artzechem lo tasu." Don't do this in your land. Don't deride anything in creation. Then they asked him, is a pregnant woman who still shows signs of virginity fit to marry the Kohen Gadol, the high priest in the temple? He can only marry a virgin. This woman looks like a virgin, but she's pregnant. So Ben Zoma answered him, Shmuel could impregnate a virgin, meaning he knew how to do hatayah, some way of intercourse, which just does not remove the hymen. It's an unusual situation. However, Ben Zoma said, but there's no one in Shmuel who can do this, so the pregnant virgin would be permitted to the high priest, because she's still a virgin. How is she pregnant? Maybe semen in the bathtub? I don't know. So anyhow, so they asked Ben Zoma these two questions. One, because this was after Ben Zoma and Rabbi Akiva, Ben Azai, and Acher, they went into the garden, the Pardes of the Kabbalah, of the mysteries of the Torah, visions. They went into deep meditative mystical state, and Rabbi Akiva said, be careful going in here. When you come to the stones of pure marble, don't say water, water, because he who speaks falsehood will not be established before God's eyes. So, if you're looking at marble, right, and you're in a meditative state, you can try this at home. Be careful, though. And eventually the marble might look like water. You say it's water. No, in this mystical state, you got to hold on to truth at all costs, because visions and voices can lie. Lower, tricky angels. Back to the subject. So Ben Zomer, he was damaged by the experience. He gazed at the mysteries and was stricken with madness. So he was one of the greatest homiletic interpreters of the Torah. He knew how to explain every verse in the Torah and quote any law in the correct way. So they wanted to see, is he going to make mistakes in interpretation? So they asked him these two questions to see if it would, according to the HaShiloah, Rabbi Mordechai Yosef, it was in order so they see if he would mock any aspect of creation. So he said, no, you can't even castrate a dog. So he gave the right answer. Dog is considered the lowest aspect of creation in the Middle East, even today. So then they asked him, can you castrate the dogs? They wanted to see, is it easy to nullify the dog out of existence? And so to speak, that's a way of deriding it. So he says, no, B'artzachem lo tasu, don't do this in your land, includes everything in your land. You can't mock anything in your land. So then they wanted to test him in the opposite direction. They wanted to see if any aspect of creation was lower than it really was. Then they say, does any aspect of creation have more power than it really does? So they asked him, can the high priest marry a pregnant virgin? The high priest is only permitted to marry a virgin. But she's pregnant. He gave the right answer. He said Shmuel could. In another generation, he could not. The high priest could not marry a pregnant virgin because somebody may have impregnated her, like Shmuel. So the Kohen Gadol is considered the greatest of all of God's creation. The Kohen Gadol is supposed to be a perfect man, a man of kindness, a man of peace, a man of depth. But maybe Ben Zoma thought that the high priest had more power than he really had. He said, no, he doesn't have the power to do hataya, to impregnate the virgin. But he also wasn't unusually strict with the high priest because he said, no, he's permitted to marry the pregnant virgin in our generation. So Ben Zoma was indeed damaged. And they asked him the third question. It says in Genesis that God made the rakia. The rakia is the firmament, and to divide between the upper waters and the lower waters. So they asked Ben Zoma, what is the difference of the upper waters and the lower waters? Meaning, how thick is the rakia, the firmament? He said, it's 3 fingers' breadths. And Rabbi Yeshua, who was asking him these questions, said, Ben Zoma is on the outside. We cannot trust him. He is indeed damaged from the experience, the mystical experience. So the HaShiloah says this means that Ben Zoma understood that there is a difference between a good desire and a bad desire. Now, what does that mean? So we're going to answer that in a second. First, we're going to turn to the Tashlum on the HaShiloah. Says there's only a hair's breadth between the upper waters and the lower waters. They all have to be accepted according to God's will. The upper desire and the lower desire have to be according to God's will. We accept desire even if we don't agree with it as something that God had willed. So the Tashlum compares it to what? The lamb offered with the Omer. And we're counting the Omer now. The Omer offering, the barley offering, and that's offered after Passover. It was double. There were 2 esronim. It's an a certain dry measure. There were 2 esronim of barley, representing lower waters and upper waters, and the lamb was like the firmament in between them. What this really means, I don't know. So the Steinsaltz Gemara explains that what was the difference? What was the difference between Ben Zoma saying the 3 fingers' breadth between the upper and lower waters, or a hair's breadth, which was the right answer of Rabbi Yeshua? So Rabbi Steinsaltz quotes the Otsar HaKavod, which says that the upper and lower waters are purely spiritual matters, and the discussion is trying to find the source of these supernal entities and the lower entities, these metaphysical ideas. According to Rabbi Yeshua, on the first day of creation, there's no separation between any of these entities. Everything existed completely unified in the creation. Ben Zoma said that the description of the upper and lower waters describes the order of creation. So Rabbi Yeshua said that the elements mentioned in creation were created. Everything was created in the beginning, on the first day, at the beginning. And then they were slowly brought out of that oneness. So, okay, what are we talking about here? Ben Zoma made the mistake in understanding that there's a greater difference between the upper and lower waters, because they really only have one source. Water signifies desire. Man has 2 kinds of desire. One that was imprinted upon him from his birth. That's like in the Midrash. The world is filled with chasadim, with loving kindness, from our birth. And in this way, if we're filled with chasadim, we could make the mistake of being kind to the cruel. There's no worse form of cruelty than showing kindness to a cruel person. This is all from the Gilyon Mei HaShiloah of the Rebbe of Radzin. He's commenting. The Radziner Rebbe, Gershon Chanech Leiner, is explaining his grandfather's words. His grandfather was the Mei HaShiloah. So because the world is filled with chesed, you might think that there are different uses of kindness and that there's different kinds of kindness. So, however, when man is merciful and he experiences desire from the side of his intellect, it is without any impurity. If a man were to direct loving kindness in his nature to the will of God, then it is even far greater than what he does with his intellect. Therefore, connecting your kindness to the source in God, rather than my own decision about what kind of kindness is correct. Therefore, it does not say in the Tilim, Hallelu Hashem min hashamayim v'mayim asher ma'al hashamayim, Hallelu Hashem, praise God, min hashamayim, from the heavens, v'hamayim asher ma'al hashamayim, and from the waters that are above the heavens. Why don't we praise God from the waters that are below the heavens? The Rabbi Gershon Chanech of Radzin answers. He says, what is man? What can man do with his intellect? Man's godly power is that which he can do with his nature. This is, as Ben Zoma understood, a great difference, where truly, in the future, God will make it clear that everything in the world comes from God. So where nature can do this and that, maybe we decide, my power and the power of my hands got this. I built this building. I did this great job. I wrote this book. I helped this little old lady across the street. It's my own choice. No, it's all coming from the will of God. So in the future, it'll see that nothing separates between the upper and lower waters. So water is desire. There's no greater desire than being thirsty when you really are thirsty, perhaps in the desert or whatnot. So that's why Rabbi Akiva warned, when you come to the stones of pure marble, don't say water, water. He warned us not to identify water twice, because at their source they're really one. So in my humble understanding, which is the greatest understanding, of course, in my humble opinion, it also could say the upper, it's like the Aleph. We have an Aleph, it has a diagonal line, that's the firmament. You have the upper waters is the upper Yud of the Aleph, the lower waters are the lower Yud of the Aleph. The upper waters, according to the Mei HaShiloah, would represent determinism. Everything is from heaven, including the fear of heaven. The lower waters would be man's free choice. And to say that there is any difference between them, because our free choice is simultaneously God's will.